Hello and welcome to another episode of the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. I am Smitty. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Drew, Joe. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on?
What's up, man? Week 2. It's time to get real.
Before we really dive into this, how did we do this week in fantasy, boys?
So I went 6-6. I think some of the teams that I expected. What up, AJB? So I went 6-6 for I had quite a few top scorers, lost to quite a few top scorers, and the team that y'all drafted for me didn't break 100. So thanks, appreciate it. But on to week 2.
Let's not talk about that team yet. Who all was even on that team? Who did we grab first for you?
Let's see.
Kamara.
Yeah, so it was Kamara. I mean, the team looks good on paper. I'm not too worried about it. The big thing there was Ridley didn't have that great of a game. The guy I played against had like 163 points, so it was pretty tough matchup all around. He had a couple of heavy hitters that I wasn't expecting. Judy went down for me, obviously. So it's a lot of bad breaks, but we're not sweating it too bad.
We're going to talk about the Jerry Judy thing and a lot more. But yeah, Drew, how was your week fantasy-wise?
So I had a rare undefeated week, 4-0. I got real lucky because I had Brandon Nyuk in two lineups and was able to sneak by. But
you're putting the podcast on your back right now with that 4-0 week.
I'm gonna go.
I went 1-3. So actually, Joe and I played each other in our dynasty league. So
that's right. What a dub! That felt so good.
I got off to a great start. I got off to a great start on Thursday night with Amari Cooper, and I remember you texted me and said like, what is this? Because it shifted me to like a 65% chance of winning the matchup or whatever. And
yeah, he was projected to beat you forever, and then all of a sudden just bam.
Yeah, Cooper puts up 38, and then it was like, okay, like we've got a dogfight here. And then I think I broke 200, which I was shocked with, and then you put up like a solid like 190. So it wasn't like you just kind of like tapered out. It was just heavyweight bout the whole way through. So feeling blessed.
You guys split me in the high scoring. I just had a weaker opponent.
I did get a manager of the week though. We should mention that as well. Like I care about that. Thanks. It's the only reason that happened is because I had the best possible lineup I could. That's because I have a bunch of first and second year players that put up zeros anyway. So unbelievable. But anyway, enough about us. Let's talk about what we can do to help you guys win your fantasy matchups this week. First thing we want to do, week 1's passed. It's time for our overreactions after 1 week. I will start here. Anybody that watched that Saints-Packers game, I think we can all agree on this, right? Jameis Winston is going to easily be a top 10 fantasy quarterback by the time that the season ends. That's my overreaction after week 1. 5 touchdown performance, absolutely lit up the Green Bay secondary. Fun to watch. Jameis Winston's an easy guy to root for. I feel like, everybody made fun of him after that 30-30 season in Tampa. He got the LASIK eye surgery. He's ready to roll. He's got the eyes to match all the physical tools now. Jameis Winston's all the way back.
I'll stay in that same game. Aaron Rodgers in that Packers offense. This ain't gonna happen again. Let's just be honest with you. First of all, Rodgers has been awful in his career in the state of Florida. I think he's like 3-5 or something, and he has like a rating of like 78, something real ridiculous. He's gonna come back this week in a vengeance. He has the Detroit Lions.
Monday Night Football.
Yeah. Rodgers is pissed off. He's looked like a fool basically ever since that game happened. There's memes.
Looks like Frank Gallagher, to be honest with you.
He looks like a homeless dude.
The man bun ain't working for him. But I think that's an overreaction. He's going to come back this week. I wouldn't be shocked if he has 5 or 6 touchdowns this week against Detroit and doesn't even play in the fourth quarter.
I mean, I have Devontae Adams, so I'm completely fine with this.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I feel like the weakness between Detroit, it'll be interesting now that Okuda's out for the year with that Achilles injury. So that's already a depleted secondary, losing a top 5 pick. So that's not going to be good. I think they're more vulnerable against the ground. But, yeah, they're going to have to bounce back. They're supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, reigning MVP. Like, you just don't see something like that 2 weeks in a row from Rodgers.
Right. Jenny, you have an overreaction for us after 1 week?
Oh, man, where do I begin? Tough week for a lot of running backs. I think for what we saw, we had your top 3, McCaffrey, Cook, and then Kamara. They all did their thing. After that, a lot of disappointing people. Somebody that I was really high on going into the year was Zeke Elliott. He faced his toughest competition against Tampa Bay, and I think he's going to bounce back nicely. He only had 11 attempts, 33 yards. He had 2 targets. He caught them both. Not really a whole lot happening in the the red zone, but I mean, Zeke's getting paid. They know what they need to do. I think that was very matchup specific, especially knowing that Dak is nursing that like shoulder lat injury. They don't want him throwing 50, 60 times a game. I think they're going to find more balance, and I think Zeke's just going to be just fine. So I'm not too worried about him. Don't panic. Don't sell right now. So just kind of hold the fort. Tampa Bay brought back all 11 of their starters. They were always a great rushing team, and Vita Vea was phenomenal.
Unreal.
He was just a one-man wrecking crew, like Casey Hampton style, just like tearing up the entire interior. So he was a big surprise, at least to me. So I'm not too worried about Zeke just yet.
Hey, if you got fantasy points for how well you did in pass pro, Zeke Elliott would have had a nice week.
Oh, man. RB1 easily.
He was an elite play action decoy this week. That's what I'll say.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and it's not like he wasn't on the field. Sure, they utilized other players in the lineup, but I mean, he's on the field. They know how to use him, but they needed that extra protection. I mean, Dak was still getting chased around, and
now they're going to be without La'el Collins,
right.
their tackle for 5 games. So maybe they just move Zeke to right tackle. I don't know.
I mean, they paid him like he could.
Have him put that weight back on that he just lost this offseason.
Let's talk about overreaction.
I hope
there's a second one for you guys.
I hope he just puts on a ton of weight and still leaves his jersey lifted up and just the belly hang too, like a sumo.
Oh, dude, those videos of the fake Zeke, those are the best. All right, moving along. Then we're gonna do pick 'em or frick 'em. So we're gonna throw out some players. This is for I guess for weekly or DFS, either or, however you want to take it. Drew, I know that you added some on here, so we can just kind of alternate with ones that we put on here. Coming off a monster week last week, a guy that we had nowhere on our radar, Mark Ingram. What are we doing with him this week?
He had 26 carries.
Yeah,
I don't think that that's going to happen again, so I'm going to frick him. They had a gigantic lead on the Jags, and they were basically moving the ball at will. They were just trying to finish that game off healthy. They were just handing the ball. Let him just move it down the field, protect it. That ain't happening again. I'll be shocked if he gets at least 20 carries this week. And I don't think his yards per carry was way down, too. He wasn't efficient in any way. I wouldn't put him anywhere near a lineup.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Where it's like we're not expecting Houston to be this like winning season type team. And Mark Ingram, he can catch the ball, but he's not a primarily receiving running back. So if we're
oh no. Looks like we lost Joe. How that was weird because it wasn't even like lagging at all on his part. It was just
he just got slept.
See ya. No, but I was going to add to that as well. Like he was saying, the fact that he's not a receiving back, the fact they're going against Cleveland, like game script is not going to be favorable here for a guy like Mark Ingram. If anybody, it'd be favorable for maybe like a guy like Rex Burkhead or maybe David Johnson. I know you're saying like David Johnson. You don't even think he's
team,
huh?
Burkhead didn't make the team.
Oh, I thought he caught I thought I saw he caught a reception yesterday.
I'm pretty sure he didn't make the team.
Interesting.
I think Philip Lindsay's still the guy that you want to own.
If he didn't right away, they brought him back because he caught a pass in that game.
Okay, yeah, so he definitely got cut at the beginning, but Lindsay still had the second most touches of all those running backs, and he scored a touchdown. He's the guy that I still think you want to own. I just think that they were handed it off, telling Ingram to protect the ball. I think long term, Lindsay's still your guy. You're not starting any of these guys anyways. You're just stashing them on the bench and just hope one of them explodes consistently. So just take the guy that has the best chance of being that guy. And I don't think that's Mark Ingram.
Yeah, so they play Cleveland this week, right? So I guess in typical Joe fashion, I had to leave the podcast for at least a little bit. As far as like performance against the run last week, the Browns in full PPR only give up 10.8 points to CEH. So that's a matchup that I probably wouldn't avoid. The Browns are probably going to dominate possession in that game. I expect the Browns to win that game, especially after having that crushing defeat. I think they're going to come out pretty hot. So I think that a pass catching role is probably going to be more important to their game script. He might get some touches early, but as soon as it gets out of hand, Johnson or Lindsay are going to see the field.
Right. Yeah, right before you so graciously exited the room, I was saying that, like, yeah, game script is not going to be favorable for a guy like Mark Ingram in this game because Cleveland, and this is where all the Pittsburgh fans get upset and leave like they always do. Cleveland is a very good team. I'm expecting that they're going to roll in this game. They're going to be up double digits, and Houston's going to have to try to keep up. That's not going to be with Mark Ingram running the ball on the ground.
Facts.
The Browns are going to be a good streaming defense for this week as well. And on defense, they're like the eighth most expensive defense. So like you can get them for $3,500 and throw them at the bottom, cheap defense, and they're probably going to put up a decent chunk. I wouldn't be shocked if they return a fumble or an interception for a touchdown too. They're going to be after Tyrod Taylor.
Drew, who was one of your Frick'em or Pick'ems?
So I like the Broncos backfield this week. So I prefer Javonte Williams, especially for DFS, because he was coming in at 4,400 compared to Melvin Gordon's 5,900. And Javonte Williams actually outcarried Melvin Gordon in week 1. If Melvin Gordon doesn't have that 170-yard run for a touchdown, he's only looking at, 8 carries for like 30 yards. He wasn't efficient. Javonte Williams they basically had about the same yards per carry. I just think that Javonte Williams can have more touches, and I think he has a better chance of scoring a touchdown. I think that he's getting the goal line work. So
So what is this? This isn't a pick'em or frick'em. You're just telling us between.
All right. All right, pick'em or frick'em. Saquon Barkley. I'm fricking him.
That was a pivot.
Yeah, I got out of that. I can't frick both of them. I obviously like them. But I'm going to frick Saquon Barkley. We talked about this last week. He's on a short week facing a tough defense. And he only had 2.6 yards per carry last week. I have him in multiple leagues where I expect him to be good down the stretch, but he's benched in all of those leagues. I don't have any consideration about playing him. And I'm trying to find a way out the best I can. I have Tyson Williams, Jamal Williams as guys I'd rather start over him.
To be fair, Saquon outproduced Aaron Rodgers last week, so I mean, it wasn't that bad. But yeah, I think he's gonna have a slow start to the season. I agree completely with what you said, Drew. I mean, the injury is still gonna be a concern, especially on a short week. The Washington football team of America of Washington is like 20th for PPR, so it's a pretty strong matchup. I think that they'll improve. The only thing that may work in his favor is the Fitzmagic injury. If it ends up being a low-scoring game, he might get more touches just by proxy of that. So who knows how that's going to work out.
It's one of those things. It's like, what does your backfield situation look like, though, where you're able to bench a guy like Saquon? You know, like, I'm asking this because I'm also in the same position where I have Saquon.
Going into the drafts this year, when I had Saquon, I felt that I needed to go heavier in the running back position. So I had extra guys that I can throw into my RB 1 and 2 slots. And then you obviously have to go wide receiver in your flex in that position.
Makes sense. All right. So speaking of Denver, you wanted to bring up their backfield. I want to bring up both their receivers here and see what you guys think about each of these guys individually. Tim Patrick and also KJ Hamler. Frick 'em or pick 'em. You got to answer separately.
I'll frick both of them. I think the de facto number 2 receiver is going to be Noah Fant. I think he's the biggest beneficiary of the Jeudy injury. Assuming that Jeudy does come back in the time frame that they have, I mean, those guys I don't think are going to move the needle enough for me that they would be somebody that I would roster. But I do think that you see an uptick in plays from Fant. They did a lot of good work on Sunday in a 2 tight end set. I think they're going to utilize that a lot. I think that this is going to be a big boost to Cortland Sutton, but I don't have a lot of faith in Hamler or Patrick. Not really for me.
Okay.
I'm freaking them both too. I agree with you. I think Noah Fant's going to get an uptick in work. KJ Hamler is kind of a one-trick pony, so maybe he'll get lucky and get a nice long touchdown out of the deal. But I wouldn't be shocked if Tim Patrick shows up, and he might be a guy that you can look at to stash on your bench and potentially become better. But I think Cortland Sutton's target share is going to greatly rise in this situation. But I wouldn't start either of those guys. I'd frick them both.
Okay. Drew, what's another name you got for us?
Real quick, we had one in the chat. So it was brought up Will Fuller, Jarvis Landry, full PPR.
Ooh. So Cleveland probably getting OBJ back this week. Will Fuller, we don't know what to go based off of, right? I mean, suspended last week. So what was Miami's target shares? I know Mike Gesicki didn't get anything, but that's all I really know about what.
Give me a minute. I'll pull it up for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I don't know that I have a clear-cut answer without looking at that, just because
I wouldn't be shocked if OBJ sits out another week just because of their matchup. I'm sure that they're not concerned about this game. Why test him in a game like this? And if they just want to get him some exposure, maybe he's going to be on a snap count. I wouldn't go anywhere near Will Fuller right now. I just don't trust Tua at the quarterback position to get him the ball. So I prefer to go to Jarvis Landry. He scored a touchdown last week, and he had some crazy bad touchdown luck last year. Maybe this year he turns it around and scores some more.
My only thing with that is going back to like the conversation we had about this game already between Cleveland and Houston. If Cleveland gets up big and they stop throwing the ball, what does that mean for Jarvis Landry? Like, Jarvis Landry better produce early in this game if that's going to happen at all. In Will Fuller's case, they're playing against Buffalo. They're going to have to, put up points potentially to keep up. So that's why it's so tough for me.
We don't know.
I'm just taking into consideration the game script.
We don't know what Will Fuller's conditioning is like and how much he's going to play. So I have no idea what to think about him, honestly.
So to go back to the question you had about target share, so it was pretty evenly split between Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, and Myles Gaskin. Parker had 7, Waddle had 6, Gaskin had 5. So 26%, 22%, 19% respectively. Then Albert Wilson had a random couple. Gesicki had a couple targets but didn't bring any of them in. So they spread the ball around pretty good. If Will Fuller is playing and he's going to be starting, I mean, that's where it gets tricky. I feel like any 3 of those receivers, Parker's good. Waddle is also good. He was, pick 12, 13, somewhere in that 10 to 13 range in the draft this year. And then Gaskin, they do the dump offs too. So for me, if I have to choose between those two, Houston was bottom 10 against the receivers last week in PPR. So I would be taking Landry out of those two.
Waddle, did you say Waddle was the 6th overall pick?
Oh, shoot. That's right. That's right. Because he had the up to the stage and just disappeared.
Right. Yeah, that's tough, man. I guess I'm worried about game script for Cleveland affecting it, but I think that Jarvis Landry is probably the safer bet.
Yeah.
I think that the Dolphins are going to play some very good defense and just keep that low scoring. I wouldn't be shocked if they kick a lot of field goals in this game too.
Yeah, if Sunday's any indication, Tua is not going to lock in on a player, and he's just going to take what's given to him. So I think it's just going to be a spread the ball around. Who makes the big play? Who knows? But, I mean, if they only get 4 or 5 catches for 30, 40 yards, I mean, that's not going to move the needle for me. That's not like, oh, man, I'm excited about having this guy in the lineup. Because I feel like Waddle has the speed. Will Fuller in Houston, I mean, he was that really vertical threat. We don't really know how they're going to utilize him. He's somebody that I would definitely hold on my bench, but I wouldn't feel comfortable playing him this week. Landry, we know he has a history of getting peppered with targets, and OBJ clearly isn't ready just yet. So even if he's close, I think it's a safer play for sure.
Drew, you had a couple more interesting names on the Frick'em or Pick'em list.
I'll throw out Josh Jacobs. I am fricking him this week. I think that the Steelers defense is going to hold him tight. And
just this week?
You're leading me on. I have a sell high candidate. So guys out there that have Josh Jacobs, I'm very concerned about him long term. He's suffering a foot injury. We don't have much clarity on how that is. That might impact him most of the season. And he also only had 10 carries last night. He scored 2 touchdowns. And if I were you, I would try to find someone in your league that's going to look at his score, see that he scored 2 touchdowns, and hope that they bite for him. Because if he's not getting the volume, I don't want him anywhere near my lineup week in and week out.
Josh Jacobs. Again, this just goes back to what are the options on the bench that you're not playing a guy like that. Steelers defense is going to shut him down. I'll say frick him too. I'll say frick him. Assuming that you were able to get, 3 solid running backs. I mean, unless your RB3 is somebody that's not a starter or at least in a timeshare, then you're not doing it, obviously. But
I'm finding
Joe,
it out.
Joe, welcome back.
I'm officially uninstalling Firefox. This is ridiculous.
We got another question in the chat here. Jameis Winston or Lamar Jackson? I mean, based off my overreaction, I got to say Winston here, right?
I mean, you don't have to.
No, I have Jackson inside my top 10 rankings, as you can see at the bottom of the screen on the Fricker ticker, and I did not have Winston, so I guess that answers the question. For me, it's Lamar Jackson.
That's going to be a really high-scoring game. Really high-scoring game. There's going to be a lot of fantasy points to be had between the Ravens and Chiefs this week.
Saints got the Panthers.
You're basically banking on him throwing 5 touchdowns again. He only had 148 yards passing.
He only threw the ball 20 times, too. Panthers were a bottom third of, like, toughest – like, they were top 10, like, toughest matchup this week against QBs. So I think their defense has improved. They're going to hold the ball longer, and Sam Darnold isn't really going to – at least he didn't really make mistakes. I mean, I think that was consistent to like last year with Teddy Two Gloves. He wasn't using like you don't have the turnovers, so they're able to keep possession. So I don't think Jameis is going to repeat the 5 touchdowns every time. I think they'll do well, but I think it's going to be a little bit more ground and pound this go around.
The last one I want to throw out there, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Ryan Fitzpatrick injury and how it could affect fantasy, but Logan Thomas, the tight end with Washington, are you freaking him or picking him this week?
I have him in my top 10 this week. Also, Tyler, this is a work computer, so that's how I keep myself separate.
That's why I was chuckling. I wondered if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw it. So all of my work stuff's on Google. All my sign-ins are for my work stuff. So Firefox is the one that I can get away with. But that's here nor there. But yeah, so Logan Thomas only had 3 targets last week. I think going to a backup quarterback, they're going to look for that safety valve, that safe option. McLaren, I'm like brokenhearted. I thought he was going to have a huge year. I think this is a big step down for him, but I think having the backup QB in does help Gibson, and I think that it's going to help Thomas a lot too. I'm not too concerned.
I'm picking him as well, mainly because the Giants' corners are actually pretty strong. James Bradbury is going to shut down the outside, and I think that they're not going to have any of the options besides throwing it to him in the middle of the field. I'll be quite honest with you.
It's first game this week. We got that on Thursday Night Football, so we shall see. Drew, the last one that you had on here that I thought was really interesting, Brandon Ayuk. What do we do with a guy like that?
So I'm personally fricking him. He already fricked me twice this week. I just don't trust.
Twice.
I had him in 2 leagues. I got goose eggs from both of them. I just don't trust the 49ers. And that's the other reason why I'm still not as high as other people about getting Elijah Mitchell off waivers. I just don't trust the 49ers week in and week out to know who their target's going to be. It's like Saints from years ago where you didn't know if they were going to throw to Devery Henderson or Robert Meacham or Marquise Colston. Like, you just don't know what the Niners are going to do week in and week out.
You pulled some names out there.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, Drew.
I just don't trust the Niners, and I don't want to put Brandon Ayuk in my lineup until I see something, especially that there's talk out there that they don't see him as that he's being a professional player. He's in the doghouse on top of his lack of targets.
Joe, anything there?
I mean, from a running back situation, I feel a lot more comfortable about the running back scenario. I think that what's the name of the guy that came in for Mostert after he went down within like 2 carries? Yeah, Mitchell. I think that he fits into that role very well. I don't think that that's the role that Trey Sermon plays. He seems more of like the Tevin Coleman type to me, which is a part of that offense, but I don't think that's the focal point of the offense. So I like picking up more. I think it's worth the lottery ticket. If he ends up popping off as that back for San Francisco, then that's like a huge win. And we don't know, but I'd rather have him and find out and take the chance than be like, oh man, I wish I had that guy. Especially if I'm somebody that has someone like Saquon or somebody that I don't really feel comfortable playing this week. But as far as Ayuk, yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot harder from a receiver perspective how they're going to do things. I think Ayuk maybe does better when Lance eventually takes over, but I think Jimmy G, that's not necessarily going to be his first look.
I mean, look at where Ayuk was being drafted to.
5th round, 4th, 5th round, yeah.
Yeah. 49ers defense, Cardinals defense, or Broncos defense. I'd have to look at the matchups there, obviously.
For this week?
I'm assuming it's just this week. 49ers at the Eagles. Cardinals at the Vikings, and Broncos.
It's obvious Broncos here.
Yeah, so you got the Broncos against the Falcons. Broncos versus the Jaguars. I mean, I would absolutely take them. I think the Broncos have a pretty solid matchup in week 3 as well. So that's a nice, like, if you are like in the category of streaming, then that's an easy way. Like, you're not.
They get the Jets.
Right. So you have the Jets the following week. So that's like a nice play to have them 2 weeks in a row. They were pretty high on my draft list for defenses for that reason. They were one of the only teams that had like 3 good matchups going into the first 3 weeks. But I think if you can find a way, like, I think the Cardinals defense, they could be the top defense this year the way that they looked. We talked about it before the show. Chandler Jones looked like he was playing D3 football.
85 sacks. Like, that's what he's on pace for.
That's insane. I mean, 3 in the first quarter, 5 for the game. I thought it was the record, but apparently the record is 7 sacks in a game. But yeah, bless you. But yeah, that was crazy. But for this week in particular, I think that the Broncos are definitely the safer play. Rookie quarterback should be good to
go. Brandon Cooks or Myles Gaskin at flex.
How did Cooks do last week? We've been high.
4 for 110 or something like that.
He didn't have a lot of receptions, but he did have a nice stat line. He was over 100 yards for sure. I definitely think that he's a Firefox guy. But yeah, let me pull up his numbers for you.
And then we also got pick him or frick him Mike Davis.
7 targets, 5 receptions, 132 yards, no touchdowns for Cooks.
Yeah.
Mike Davis we can knock this one out real quick. He's an obvious frickum. He's got Tampa Bay this week.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard pass for me.
Yeah, did you see Zeke Elliott against them? You think Mike Davis is going to go run all over them or something? Although they should have to pass, right? He should have more of an involvement from that standpoint.
Wayne Gallman didn't play last week too, and I think that he'll get some more involvement this week. They were working him slowly.
Yeah, I don't know what your other options are, but yeah, I'm on the frickum train too, assuming that your other options are brutal.
Yeah. And then for Gaskin, he only had 9 carries, 49 rushing yards. He also had 5 catches for 27. I probably like Cooks there. We still don't really know a lot about the Dolphins' backfield. They had some pretty good utilization across their different running backs. So for me, it's like Cook seems like the number 1 guy. It seems like they'll be behind in Cleveland, so he should be getting the targets. 7 targets to me, anything 7 or above, like that's very comfortable for me. And he could bust one out for a big TD. So I think I like Cooks there in the flex.
Same. Drew, moving along here. Now you can talk about your Broncos backfield if you want with some DFS sleepers that you got.
So I already mentioned the Broncos backfield. I prefer Javonte Williams to Gordon just because of his price point. I like Matthew Stafford here at 6,400. They are playing against Green Bay, as we know, and I think that's going to be a high-scoring game, similar to what happened last week. They're going to get down early, and then or I was thinking the Lions game. Stafford's just going to tear it up on top. Who are the Rams playing?
You got Rams versus, let's see here, the Colts.
Colts.
So what the Seahawks did to them.
Yeah, Russ cooked them last week. I expect Matthew Stafford to do the same after he had a nice outing last week on Sunday Night Football against a good defense against the Bears. I like them. I like David Montgomery and his matchup against the Bengals, obviously. I think that they'll be able to run the ball pretty easily against them. And I like Corey Davis for the Jets as well at 5,300. Zach Wilson's been targeting him a lot. I think that he'll get a lot of receptions. And then
Gilmore. Yep.
And my final one, I have MVS. If you want to go with a Rodgers Adams stack or a Rodgers Marcus Valdez-Scantling stack, Valdez-Scantling's been looking good through training camp, and I think that he's going to get a nice long touchdown pass against the Lions on Monday night.
Okay. That's been DFS with Drew.
Dr. Drew, DFS Drew. I mean,
yeah. Also, hey, Drew threw something out to us. Let's throw it out to you guys if you guys would be interested in playing like DFS along with us. We were kind of kicking the tires on the idea if it's something you guys would be interested in. Obviously, we'd do it. Otherwise, you're leaving it in our hands, and we're all so lazy it might not happen. So let us know if you want it to happen. Last thing's going to be some injury updates to talk about. We kind of already touched on the Fitzpatrick a little bit because of his impact with Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, but let's talk about that hip injury a little bit more.
Yeah, so he had a hip subluxation. Essentially what happened was he got tackled from the back and his hip dislocated, but it actually pops back into place on an angle. Very painful, I'm sure. And he basically just sat there on the field looking like it didn't even hurt him. He's looking at a 6 to 8 week recovery. And we talked about a little bit about those players that are going to be affected. Joe mentioned Terry McLaurin. I personally think that those two guys are still going to be fine. It's just that they might be more matchup dependent, as before we might have just been throwing them directly in our lineup. So it's something to look at on a weekly basis. I still like him this week. Logan Thomas is against the Giants, but you might want to fade Terry McLaurin. But his injury's very serious. They say 6 to 8 weeks. It could be even longer than that, because if he has any damage to that, it actually could affect his mobility going forward long term.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. So you don't like you're not believing in Heineke after seeing his performance in the playoffs last year against Tampa?
I mean, he's a gutsy player, but that's why I like him on a situational basis on their matchups. But I don't like Terry McLaurin going against James Bradbury this week. He might be shadowing him, and it might be a real tough one for him.
Yeah. Joe, anything to add there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's a shame to see him go down like that, especially in week one. I think everybody was expecting him to gunsling. I don't think that – I think this changes their entire outlook on the way that they're going to run the offense. Great for Gibson, but I think we're going to see a lot more shallower routes for the receivers. I think we're going to see a lot more involvement from the tight ends, and probably see a little bit of uptick in receiving from the running back group as well. So it's not fun. It's the unfortunate side of football, where it's like you have these bigger injuries. And I mean, Fitz has played for almost every team in the league now. It's like you want to see him do well. So it's just sad.
Adam in the comments had a question: Fuller, Waddle, Devontae Parker. Who would you drop to pick up a free agent? Jefferson, Lockett, Chenault, Hollywood Brown, Sutton are my other receivers. So I guess which receiver in Miami are we the lowest on that you'd be willing to drop to pick up another position?
Honestly, I would be dropping Brown out of – if you have all 8 of those receivers, I probably would be fine. Well,
that's funny, because I wasn't even looking at the names in there. I was just thinking about the 3 Miami receivers and not thinking they could be another option. But you're right. I'd probably do the same.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't look bad on Monday. I mean, it was weird. I don't know if you guys noticed, but they really, really hampered on Lamar Jackson, pocket passer. Look at him stay in the pocket. Look at him throwing in the pocket. And they talked about it the whole time. But yeah, it's to me, it's Jefferson and Lockett. They're not going anywhere. Sutton, we already talked about. He's going to have the huge uptick from the injury to Judy. I don't really see a need to have, if all of those players are on your team, to keep all of them anyway. Fuller actually might be the one that I get rid of. I think Devontae Parker definitely has a role. Waddle, they specifically went out and targeted him in the draft, and he's more of the unknown, how are they going to utilize him? Also has the Alabama connection, and Will Fuller has been suspended. So what's his role going to be now that they have it? And you could argue Chenault as well, but I think second-year receivers, that's when they make that big leap. So I'd be more hesitant to let him go so early, especially when he had 7 targets last week.
Drew, anything to add there?
I mean, I wouldn't hold all 3 of those Dolphins receivers. I'd probably drop 2 of them. And I think Waddle has the most upside, so I'd probably keep him.
Yeah, after reading that question, I thought of how wild that scenario is. The fact that he has 8 receivers on this roster, 3 of them on the same team.
Unless the question is, the only way that because I was maybe he has those 4 or 5, and then it's auto
draft.
Sometimes it'd be like that.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the Waddle is protected there for me. I think that I agree. I would probably just go with the unknown, keep him on the roster. Say it's Parker. I mean, like you said, Brown even for me.
Yeah.
Robbie Anderson or Marquez Callaway, PPR.
Let me see. What do we got matchup-wise?
Aren't they playing each other?
Yeah, so you got Carolina and the Saints. So let me look at some stuff real quick.
I'm gonna say Robbie Anderson.
What was his target share last week?
Robbie Anderson. Let me see. I'll pull that up for you real quick.
Let Moneybags Marshawn Lattimore try to shadow him.
So McCaffrey had 9. DJ Moore had 8. Robbie Anderson actually only had 3 targets. So that's pretty risky. So that was a 9% target share. He had the same percentage as Dan Arnold, who was the big sleeper pick for last week that didn't really do anything. But from what I saw in that game, if you're not passing to McCaffrey, they're looking at DJ Moore all the time. Robbie Anderson did have that long touchdown. It was a great little story because they both played for the Jets. I think that Callaway has a bounce back week this week. The Saints, they were like 28th right now in terms of fantasy points allowed. So for all wide receivers last week, they only gave up 29.5 points in full PPR. The Panthers were a little bit more pedestrian. So they were 15th, gave up 42.5. I don't envision Callaway didn't get the targets, but they also didn't throw the ball. So it would be a Callaway pick for me, I think. I'm not going to panic after 1 week. We saw what he did in the preseason.
Drew?
I probably have to go the same route. I don't think that he's the guy there. They targeted the tight end a little more last week. I think that he'll have a bounce back week. Marquez Callaway.
See, I guess that's kind of how I'm looking. I'm willing to wait another week on Robbie Anderson. If he has another week where he has like 3 targets, come on, Darnold. What are we doing? Get that Jets connection going.
Yeah. Did we do the Pitts Frick'em or Pick'em yet?
Oh, no, we didn't.
That was one of the questions off of Twitter today.
That is. Yeah, let's might as well do that while we're on it then. Yeah, so Pitts, where we at with him? Because they're going to be playing catch up.
Right. I feel great about Pitts. From what I saw this week, not the greatest performance from a fantasy perspective, but here's what I like. He played 71% of the snaps. He ran a route 90% of the time that Matt Ryan dropped back. So they're not using him as a blocker. Shocking. He was one of the most dynamic athletes in college last year. He was in the slot 23 times, and he was in split wide as a wide receiver 14 times, and he had a 22.8% target share, which tied him for the lead for the team. So to me, trust the process. The results will come. I have no worries about Kyle Pitts. I really like how they utilized him. He's pretty much the number 2 wide receiver on that team, and he's going to be a really good tight end in fantasy this year. So if you have someone in your league that's like, oh, man, like I'd be like, yo, Kyle Pitts sucks. You should trade him to me. See what happens. Throw that out there.
Same with Calvin Ridley. Same offense.
Zeke sucks too. Trade him to me.
Najee Harris. I think those guys will be okay.
I'm with you, though. I mean, it was a down week for everybody. That's why I just brought up Calvin Ridley, too. Like, he had like 3 to 5 targets, something like that on that first drive. And then Matt Ryan was like, forget that.
Yeah, definitely play Pitts. I just want to point out that Matt Ryan's soft.
That's the only thing to add. The other thing from Twitter was sit Brandon Ayuk. So Frick'em or Pick'em Brandon Ayuk. We already touched on Brandon Ayuk a little bit, but that's a very tough scenario, especially with where his ADP was.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm not sure we have too much more to add than what we did, whatever it was, like 15 minutes ago on the show. So, yeah, Brandon Ayuk wouldn't touch him this week. We'll see what happens. I don't know if, the next guy we're talking about, Raheem Mostert being injured, that completely sucks. It seems like this guy just can't catch a break. I don't know if his injury is going to play a role into, Brandon Ayuk having any more of a role. But, yeah, let's talk about the Mostert injury. What does this mean from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah,
well, it means that Drew's big prediction went right out the window that he's going to stay healthy all season.
It was bold for a reason.
I guess it kind of proves right why it was bold.
Yeah, I knew I was going to be screwed on that one, to be honest. I felt better about the AJ Green prediction than I did about the Raheem Mostert prediction. Yeah, he's done for the year, obviously. I mean, this could be a career-ending thing for me, honestly. His contract's coming to an end, I feel like, and he's been hurt every single year since he signed that deal. I don't see a reason why they're going to bring him back, and I don't think anybody will pick him up, so that's unfortunate, honestly. Hopefully it's not over for him, but I don't feel too confident about that. And we talked about Elijah Mitchell. I still don't think I would go and spend out all my fab to get him. I know that a lot of people are high on him, but I've just been burned so many times by the Niners rushing attack. I started JaMychal Hasty twice last year, and he gave me a total of 2 points in those matchups because everybody thought that he was going to be the guy. And if you want to take that risk, that's fine, but I still think that Trey Sermon's going to get some work. when Jeff Wilson comes off IR, I think he's going to get some work. I think JaMychal Hasty's going to get some work, and they pick a different guy every week, and you never know who it is. It's kind of like my hatred for Nyheim Hines. So, I mean, if you're first in your waiver order, I mean, it's definitely worth a shot. But I've seen a lot of people on Twitter that are saying they're going to spend 25% of their fab on this guy right off the bat, and I personally would not do that.
I'll have to tweet about it later. I'm on the fence of whether or not I do that. I think for me, it's about the size of the league. Like if you're in a deeper league, this might be your one shot at like getting like a starting running back. So it's like you kind of have to jump in. I mean, this is last year. We're like, all right, is James Robinson like the real deal, or is this just like a flash in the pan? And we don't really know. But if you're in a smaller league, then it's like, all right, like I like to sit back and hold on to the waiver. And the deeper ones, you kind of just got to shoot your shot when you got it.
If you went 0 running back in your draft, this is like a miracle situation for you. You have to jump at that. But if you're pretty deep at the running back position, I think that it's risky to blow a lot of your fab. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Couple receiver injuries to talk about here as well. Michael Gallup and Jerry Jeudy, we kind of already touched on. Obviously an uptick there for Noah Fant. Maybe a guy like Tim Patrick, maybe a guy like KJ Hamler. Obviously Sutton is just going to see an uptick there. What does it mean for the Cowboys, though? Is there a third receiver maybe somewhere there, or is it just Cooper and Lamb's numbers increase that much more?
Yes. Cooper had 16 targets. CeeDee Lamb had 15.
I mean, they weren't Darren Waller, so there's still room to grow. So Michael Gallup's injury, though, 3 to 5 weeks with a calf injury. I think that this is getting downplayed as to how significant it actually is, because a calf injury is going to linger with him all year. Every single time he takes a step on his front foot, he's going to feel that. It's going to take a little bit out of his burst, and he's a deep threat guy. I would still obviously keep him on your IR slot if you have him, but if you don't have IR slots, I would actually consider maybe dropping him, but I would prefer not to do that. But if you're desperate for the roster spot, he could be welcome to Dumpsville. I don't think there's going to be any other guys that are going to take his role. Cedric Wilson might get some targets and maybe get some points, but he's not a guy that you're going to want to start every week unless it's a deeper league. I think it's just going to go to Lamb, Cooper, and maybe Blake Jarwin's going to get some more work, Dalton Schultz, or maybe Zeke's just going to get more carries.
Yeah, I actually think that this benefits Zeke from a receiving perspective the most, actually. So they like to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So Cedric Wilson would become that de facto number 3 receiver. He got 3 targets at the end of last week. I don't really see him having like a formidable role in the offense. He's not someone I would pick up. But Schultz had 6 targets. If he gets a couple of those, Gallup had 7. That could propel Schultz. Jarwin had 4. That could push him into like maybe do we look at him? But I think ultimately when we look at Zeke last year, he had pretty much like 6 or 7 targets every game that Dak played before he got hurt. So I would like to see more from Zeke. He's not going to be in the box blocking every week. I think they're going to do some more dump offs for him. I don't see how they could throw the ball to Cooper or Lamb any more than they could, but it works in Madden, so who knows?
Are you guys, because you said Dalton Schultz or Jarwin? Which one between the two?
Well, your targets are like last week.
Schultz had 11%. Jarwin was at 7, so 6 and 4 targets respectively.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as a receiver, I like Dalton Schultz a little bit more.
Right, yeah.
Who ran more routes?
All right, listen, you got to ask me these questions in advance.
No. Okay, so to finish up the show, I want to pull up. Joe, you sent me a spreadsheet here that I can share with everybody on my screen. So I'm going to do that. The target share sheet that you sent me.
Yeah, and keep on the lookout for this. Something that we're going to do as we get more data on the year is that we're going to be posting like the last 3-week fantasy matchups. So you can see as we're rolling throughout the season. One of the biggest gripes that I have with fantasy football data is that they're always looking at the aggregate for the whole season. But so much happens on a week-to-week basis that I like to focus in on what's happened in the last 3 weeks, including if there's a bye week, we might go back to a 4th. But things like, all right, what does the target share look like? What is the average points per game that this team is giving up? So that we can go in and really say, all right, yeah, we might have these season averages, but if you have a player that had one great week and then maybe somebody had like a big injury on defense, you're not going to see that in the grand scheme of things. So this is something that we'll be sending out. We'll have different graphs and stuff like that coming from the account. So make sure to follow. But excited to, as we get more data, to push that forward.
Cool. So, yeah, right now, because we were looking at the Cowboys, you can see the Cowboys target share here for week 1, as we mentioned. Pretty significant drop-off there after CeeDee Lamb. So, Corey Clement is on the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
Big target share there.
Yeah.
Oh.
A couple things that we got in the comments I see here. Boyd, Ayuk, or Chark for a PPR lead. Well, we already said our piece on Ayuk. Tyler Boyd
going to score 30 this week just because of all this.
Well, yeah, that's fine. What do we make of Tyler Boyd? He had a 332 line. Kind of seemed like the forgotten man in Cincinnati.
Which is interesting because I thought that he was going to be the Joe Burrow safety valve. Like, I expected T. Higgins to be the red zone guy. I expected Chase to really be the downfield threat that he was. We saw the touchdown. He remembered how to catch the football again. So good for him for figuring out what the football looks like. It's huge. Pretty terrible as a Steelers fan for him to figure that out, but it is what it is. But yeah, I thought that Boyd was going to have like this really undervalued role. He was like a 9th round pick in drafts. And I was like, all right, like Boyd's safe. He's not really like this sexy player, but he gets the job done. And there was just nothing to be had. He just didn't really seem like he was that big of a part of the office anymore.
That's a tough one for me.
I'm taking Chark. He had almost 10 targets. He didn't connect on a lot, but I think it's going to normalize. He hadn't practiced all preseason because of the broken finger.
Right.
So I think as more time goes, him and Marvin Jones both looked really good to me. We know that Jacksonville's going to struggle to win most games, and I think he's the most talented receiver out of the group. Jones had that like extra time with the quarterback, but for me, Chark is the easy pick out of those three. Ayuk could very well pop off still, but I think Chark gives a good balance of solid floor, but also going off and having a big game.
Yeah, they got the Broncos, who also just placed Bradley Roby on IR, so don't know if he's going to see Surtain or if he'll see Callahan.
Yeah, the Broncos gave up 17 receptions, 246 yards, and a touchdown for 47.6 fantasy points last week against wide receivers, which was the 9th worst.
Okay.
So I really
I'm Team Chark.
Yeah, I'm the same. They're going to throw the ball a ton this week, I think.
Effectively. OBJ and Miles Sanders for Calvin Ridley and Phillip Lindsay.
So in my mind, I eliminate Phillip Lindsay from this trade.
I eliminate OBJ too. We don't know what OBJ is. It's basically Miles Sanders for Calvin Ridley.
If you're getting Calvin Ridley in this scenario,
you have to hammer it. Depending
on what your running back room looks like. But I would lean on the Ridley side of that trade. I don't personally like it. But if you're going to be starting Phillip Lindsay to pick up Calvin Ridley, I could see that backfiring a bit.
Like you said, Phillip Lindsay's not really even part of this. Like, he's literally just a piece to make it 2 for 2. Right. He's really not part of the trade. I mean, if you can get Calvin Ridley, who we thought was like I guess everybody consensus-wise, beginning of the second round player.
Yeah.
He could end up being the top wide receiver in fantasy at the end of the year.
Yeah. So
to me, this is a buy low. If you're able to sell off OBJ, who hasn't done anything in 3 years, and Miles Sanders, who was supposed to be like the darling of fantasy football last year and didn't do that immediately.
Oh
Najee and Dalvin Cook, go get Calvin Ridley, secure the bag. There's nothing else that needs.
What is this team? This is is this the same team that has the
auto draft team? Yeah, I'm auto drafted for everything now. Why do we even have this show?
Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything though that you wanted specifically to point out with target shares, not just for the Cowboys but for any other team? Hey, can we go to the Steelers real quick? Actually,
yeah, I'll pull it up.
Okay. I wouldn't say that there's anything overly surprising there. We expect Deontay to lead the team in targets. Maybe how few attempts there were. They only played like 55 offensive snaps as a team. So
right. Yeah, and I mean, Deontay also had that little bit of like an injury scare at the beginning of the game too. Juju is definitely the third down. Like, if we need to make sure that this is going to happen, he's very much like the safety net.
security blanket.
Claypool PI machine. If you had pass interference yards, the dude's going to get so many pass interferences this year. Did a lot better at high pointing the ball on Sunday, so that was good to see. But I have concerns about Claypool from a fantasy perspective. People thought that he was just going to take over the room. I don't see that happening this year based on the way that they're running the offense. So I think that Juju is like a solid flex. I think Deontay is a floor of a wide receiver too, depending on his target share. If he's continuing at that 31%, he has a chance of cracking the top 12 easily, in my mind.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else unless there's anything else you guys want to highlight or point out.
Real quick, just thinking about like if people are streaming defenses for this week. So teams that are probably already rostered, Browns, I would imagine if they're not rostered, you should be looking at them. They've got the Texans this week. Patriots got the Jets. I expect them to be rostered. Buccaneers against the Falcons. I imagine that the Buccaneers are also rostered. If you're looking for someone to stream this week, I like the Packers versus the Lions. I also could see something like Saints versus the Panthers. Lattimore's a little bit banged up. I think he broke his thumb or something like that, or sprained his thumb, I believe. But I think they're going to be fine. Sam Darnold is still Sam Darnold. So I would say from a streaming perspective, if you're looking for a defense for this week, I would say Packers, Broncos, Saints would be ones that may be on the wire.
There you go. Drew, anything else to add?
No, I think we're good. I mean, I can add, I think that you have Le'Veon Bell on your roster. You should drop him.
There you go. Notice he's not in our top 10 running back rankings at the bottom of the Fritter ticker right now.
Yeah, but pull up the top 10 rap rankings. Was he still? Oh, no, he didn't make that either. It's unfortunate.
Damian Lillard.
Top 5 easily. What a goat. Can't believe they put him on that terrible 2K. That was a disservice to Dame.
But other than that, all we can really do at this point is wish you guys the best of luck in week 2. Let us know how you guys do in those matchups. Tweet at us on Sunday morning if you have any start-sit type questions. But other than that, for Joe, for Drew, this is Smitty. This has been the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.